The August heat pressed down on Chicago like a wool blanket as I hauled the last box up 3 flights of stairs to apartment 3C. My arms burned, sweat dripped down my back, and I was seriously questioning my decision to save money by not hearing movers. But at 23, fresh out of college with a mountain of student debt and a new job that barely covered rent, every dollar mattered. I dropped the box in the empty living room and surveyed my new home. It wasn't much, a two-bedroom apartment in Logan Square with creaky hardwood floors, a kitchen the size of a closet, and windows that probably leaked heat like a sieve in winter. But it was mine. Well, half mine. I'd found the listing on Craigslist 3 weeks ago, posted by someone looking for a roommate to split the rent. The ad had been refreshingly straightforward. Clean, quiet professional seeks same, no drama, no parties, just someone chill who pays rent on time. It had appealed to me immediately. After 4 years of dorm life and another 2 with 3 messy undergrads in a college town, the promise of one clean, quiet roommate sounded like paradise. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Marcus, your new roommate, running about 30 min late, traffic is insane, sorry." I texted back a quick no problem and collapsed onto the floor, grateful for a few more minutes to catch my breath. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Instagram, half watching the stories of friends from college, now scattered across the country in their own new apartments, new cities, new lives. My finger hovered over one profile in particular, Tyler, my ex. Well, not exactly an ex. We'd had a thing for about 6 months senior year, intense, secretive, and ultimately doomed. He'd never wanted anyone to know. "I'm not ready," he'd said. "I'm still figuring things out." I'd waited, hoped, convinced myself that love would be enough. It wasn't. 2 weeks before graduation, he'd started dating a girl from his economics class and acted like nothing had ever happened between us. That had been the final push I needed to leave Indiana. Chicago felt like a fresh start. A city big enough to disappear in, diverse enough that 2 guys holding hands wouldn't turn heads. Here, I could finally just be myself without apology or explanation. I heard footsteps on the stairs and scrambled to my feet, suddenly self-conscious about being sprawled on the floor like a starfish. The door swung open and Marcus appeared. He was nothing like I'd imagined. I don't know what I'd been expecting, maybe someone in their 30s, buttoned up and boring, the kind of person who kept their spices alphabetized. Instead, Marcus looked about my age, maybe a year or two older. He was tall, probably 6'2", with broad shoulders that strained against a gray t-shirt damp with sweat. His dark hair was cut short neat, and he had the kind of strong jawline you usually only saw in magazine ads. His skin was a warm brown, and when he smiled, his entire face lit up. "Eli," he asked, extending a hand. His grip was firm, warm. "Marcus Hayes, great to finally meet you in person." "Yeah, you too," I managed, hoping I didn't sound as flustered as I felt. "Thanks for being cool about me taking the smaller room, I know you were here first." Marcus waved it off. "No worries, I've got more stuff anyway, my bedroom looks like a sporting goods store exploded." He laughed, and I found myself smiling automatically in response. He had one of those laughs that was genuinely infectious. "Let me grab my last load from the car and then I can help you unpack if you want," he offered. "Oh no, that's okay, I can manage." "Dude, come on, you look like you're about to collapse. Besides, we're roommates now, might as well start the whole bonding thing." He said it lightly, but there was something genuine in his expression that made me nod. "Okay, yeah, that'd be great." Over the next few hours, we fell into an easy rhythm. Marcus was a talker, not in an annoying way, but in a way that filled the space comfortably. He told me about his job in sports marketing, his love of terrible horror movies, his complete inability to cook anything beyond scrambled eggs and toast. "I'm serious," he said, laughing as we assembled my cheap IKEA bookshelf. "Last week I tried to make pasta and somehow burnt it. Pasta, how do you burn boiling water?" "I don't think that's physically possible," I said, tightening a bolt. "I made it possible, it's a gift." He handed me another piece. "What about you, can you cook?" "Yeah, actually, my mom's Italian, well, Italian-American. She made sure all of us kids knew our way around a kitchen." "Oh man, you're going to save my life. I've been living on takeout and protein bars for like 2 years." He paused. "Wait, that's not a weird assumption, right? Like, I'm not expecting you to cook for me or anything, I just meant." "It's fine," I interrupted, smiling despite myself. "I like cooking, and honestly, it's more fun to cook for 2 people than just myself." "You're a saint, an actual saint." Marcus's phone buzzed and he glanced at it, his expression softening. "Oh hey, my girlfriend's asking about dinner, do you want to grab something with us? Her name's Vanessa, I think you guys would get along." The word girlfriend shouldn't have hit me like a small punch to the gut, but it did, which was stupid. Of course Marcus had a girlfriend, he was straight obviously, that smile, those muscles, that effortless confidence, he probably had women falling over themselves. Thanks, but I'm pretty wiped," I said, forcing my tone to stay casual. Rain check. "For sure, you need anything before I head out, beer, water, a forklift." I laughed, "I'm good, go have fun." After Marcus left, the apartment felt suddenly very quiet. I finished unpacking in silence, arranging my books on the newly assembled shelf, hanging clothes in my closet, setting up my small desk by the window. From here, I could see the street below, already coming alive with the Saturday night crowd heading to bars and restaurants. I pulled out my laptop and opened a blank document. I'd been trying to write for years, short stories mostly, little sketches of life and love and longing. My creative writing professor in college had encouraged me, said I had a distinctive voice and should pursue it. But distinctive voices didn't pay the bills, so I'd taken a job as a copywriter at a small marketing firm. It wasn't art, but it was words and it was money. Still, I promised myself I'd keep writing on the side. Real writing, honest writing. I stared at the blank page, cursor blinking. Finally, I typed, "The first time I saw him, I knew I was in trouble." Then I deleted it, too dramatic, too revealing. I closed the laptop and lay back on my bed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. Through the wall, I could hear the faint sound of a TV in the neighboring apartment. Somewhere outside, someone laughed, a bright, free sound that made my chest ache with something I couldn't quite name. This was supposed to be my fresh start, my chance to build a life without secrets, without shame, without pretending to be someone I wasn't. And here I was on day one, already lying to myself about why my stomach had flipped when Marcus smiled at me. I grabbed my phone and texted my best friend Jade, who'd moved to New York for law school. "Moved in, apartment is okay, roommate is straight and has a girlfriend, why is my life a cliché?" She responded within seconds, "Oh no, is he hot?" "That's not the point." "That's exactly the point, on a scale of 1-10. I hesitated, then typed, "Solid 9. RIP, I'll start planning your funeral, death by yearning." "You're the worst. You love me, now stop texting me and go introduce yourself to some actual gay men. Chicago has like a million of them." She was right, of course. I'd already downloaded all the apps, Grindr, Tinder, Hinge. I'd been on exactly 2 dates since breaking things off with Tyler, both of which had been perfectly fine and perfectly forgettable. The problem wasn't finding gay men. The problem was that apparently I had a type, and that type was emotionally unavailable straight guys. Great, fantastic, exactly what I needed to hear. I tossed my phone aside and closed my eyes, willing myself to sleep. Tomorrow was Sunday. I'd unpack the rest, explore the neighborhood, maybe hit up one of the gay bars Jade had texted me about. I'd be productive, social, healthy. But as I drifted off, my last thought was of Marcus's smile and the easy way he'd laughed, and how I was definitely, absolutely, without question not going to develop feelings for my straight roommate. Definitely not. Asterisk Chapter 2, Finding a Rhythm. The first few weeks of living with Marcus passed in a surprisingly comfortable blur. We fell into a routine without really trying. He was an early riser, up at 6 for the gym before work. I was more of a night owl, staying up late writing or watching TV. Our schedules complemented each other perfectly. We saw each other most evenings but never felt like we were in each other's way. True to his word, Marcus couldn't cook. The first time I made dinner, a simple chicken piccata with roasted vegetables, he'd looked at the plate like I'd handed him a Michelin star meal. "Dude," he'd said, fork frozen halfway to his mouth, "this is incredible." "It's really not that complicated," I'd protested, but I couldn't help feeling pleased. "Are you kidding? This is better than half the restaurants I've been to. Vanessa is going to be so jealous." Vanessa, his girlfriend. I'd met her the second week when she'd stopped by to drop off some of Marcus's mail that had been delivered to her place. She was pretty in an effortless way, long dark hair, athletic build, quick smile. She worked as a physical therapist and clearly adored Marcus, based on the way she lit up when he entered a room. "So you're the famous Eli," she'd said, shaking my hand. "Marcus says you're saving him from a lifetime of frozen pizza." "I think he's being dramatic," I'd replied. I'm really not, Marcus had interjected, slinging an arm around Vanessa's shoulders. This guy made homemade bread last weekend, bread from scratch. Vanessa had laughed. Okay, yeah, you're definitely a keeper. Maybe you can teach this one how to operate a stove without setting off the smoke alarm. They were good together, easy, comfortable, the kind of couple that finished each other's sentences and shared inside jokes. Watching them made my chest tight with a feeling I refused to examine too closely. It wasn't jealousy, exactly. More like witnessing something I wasn't sure I'd ever have. Work kept me busy enough to avoid dwelling on it. The marketing firm was small but fast-paced, and I was learning a lot, even if most of what I wrote was social media copy for protein powder companies and boutique fitness studios. It wasn't poetry, but it paid the bills. My real writing happened late at night after Marcus had gone to bed. I'd been working on a short story about two college students, their secret relationship, the way love could feel like both a haven and a prison when you couldn't claim it publicly. It was therapeutic in a way. Getting it all out on the page made it feel less heavy in my chest. One Thursday night, about a month after I'd moved in, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop, deep in a scene, when Marcus emerged from his room in gym shorts and a faded college t-shirt. "You're still up?" he asked, heading to the fridge for a water bottle. "Yeah, just working on something." I instinctively tilted my laptop screen away, even though he wasn't trying to look. "Work stuff." "No, a personal project I write sometimes, fiction mostly." Marcus's eyebrows shot up. "Really, that's cool, like stories." "Yeah, short stories, maybe a novel someday if I ever finish one." I shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "It's just a hobby." "Still cool though." He leaned against the counter, unscrewing his water bottle. "What kind of stuff do you write?" How to answer that? Gay love stories about emotionally complicated men seemed a bit on the nose. Just contemporary fiction, relationships mostly, people figuring out who they are. That was vague enough to be true. "You should let me read something sometime," Marcus said. "If you're comfortable sharing, I mean, I'm always looking for new books." "Maybe," I said, knowing I never would. The thought of Marcus reading my work, seeing all the longing and confusion and desire laid bare on the page, made me want to crawl under the table. Marcus must have sensed my discomfort because he changed the subject. "Hey, so Vanessa and I are having some people over Saturday night, just a small thing, few friends, some drinks, you should join, I want you to meet everyone." "Oh, I scrambled for an excuse. The thought of spending an evening watching Marcus with Vanessa and their coupled-up friends sounded like torture. "I might have plans." "Might. Probably I'll let you know." "Cool." Marcus didn't push, which I appreciated. "Well, if your plans fall through, you're more than welcome, no pressure though." After he went back to his room, I stared at my laptop screen, the cursor blinking in the middle of an unfinished sentence. I'd been writing a scene where one character finally tells the other how he feels, knowing it might ruin everything. It was supposed to be cathartic. Instead, it just felt painfully familiar. I closed the laptop and went to bed. Saturday arrived too quickly. I tried to make plans, texted a few people from work, checked the events at local gay bars, but nothing had materialized. By 7 p.m., I was lying on my bed, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, trying to convince myself to go somewhere, anywhere, just to avoid being home while Marcus entertained. The sounds of arrival started filtering through my door. Laughter, music, the clink of bottles. Marcus had a good laugh, deep and genuine. I could pick it out easily from the others. Around 8, there was a knock on my door. "Yeah," I called out. Marcus poked his head in. "Hey man, you sure you don't want to join? We've got plenty of food." "I'm good, thanks." He lingered in the doorway and I could feel him studying me. "You okay? You've been kind of quiet lately." "Yeah, fine, just tired from work." "Okay." He didn't sound convinced. "Well, the offer stands. We're going to play Cards Against Humanity later if you change your mind." After he left, I lay there for another 20 minutes, feeling increasingly pathetic. I was hiding in my room in my own apartment because I couldn't handle watching my straight roommate be happy with his girlfriend. This was exactly the kind of behavior I'd promised myself I'd leave behind in Indiana. Fuck it. I changed into clean jeans and a decent shirt, ran a hand through my hair and opened my door. The living room had been transformed. String lights Marcus must have hung earlier cast everything in a warm glow. About 8 people were scattered around, sitting on our thrift store couch, perched on the kitchen counter, standing in clusters with beers in hand. Music played from a Bluetooth speaker, loud enough to feel festive but not so loud you couldn't talk. Marcus spotted me immediately. "Eli, you came." He navigated through the crowd, genuine pleasure on his face. "Come on, let me introduce you." The next hour passed in a whirl of names and faces. There was James and his fiancée Sophie, Marcus's friends from college, Keisha and Darius, a couple who'd known Marcus since high school, Tom and Alex, coworkers from the sports marketing firm, and Vanessa, of course, who gave me a warm hug like we were old friends. "I'm so glad you decided to join," she said. "Marcus has been worried you don't like us." "What? No, I'm teasing," she laughed, "but seriously, we're happy you're here." Everyone was friendly in that effortless way that told me they were good people, Marcus's people. They asked about my job, my move to Chicago, made me feel included in their conversations without putting me on the spot. For the first time since arriving in the city, I felt like maybe I could build something here, not just a life but a community. We did end up playing Cards Against Humanity, which devolved into exactly the kind of inappropriate, hilarious chaos that game was designed to create. I found myself laughing, really laughing, more than I had in weeks. Marcus kept catching my eye across the table, grinning like he was pleased I'd joined. Around midnight, people started trickling out. Vanessa stayed to help clean up, and I joined in despite their protests. "You don't have to do that," Marcus said, taking a trash bag from my hand. "You're a guest." "I live here," I pointed out, "and I have a personal stake in this place not being disgusting." Vanessa laughed. "He's got you there." The three of us worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, collecting bottles and plates, wiping down surfaces. It felt domestic in a way that should have been uncomfortable but wasn't. "Your friends are really nice," I said. "They liked you too," Vanessa replied. "Sophie said you're delightfully witty," her words, not mine. "She's not wrong though," Marcus added. "That answer about the Pope had me crying." I felt my cheeks heat. It was just a stupid card game. "You're allowed to be good at stupid card games," Marcus said, bumping my shoulder with his. The casual touch sent an unwelcome jolt through me. "I'm glad you came out. I meant what I said. I want you to feel at home here with all of us." "Thanks," I managed. "I do feel at home, I mean." After Vanessa left and we finished cleaning, Marcus and I stood in the kitchen, the apartment suddenly very quiet. "You want a beer?" Marcus asked. "I'm too wired to sleep yet." "Sure." We ended up on the couch, a documentary about climbing Everest playing on low volume while we talked. Marcus told me about growing up in Cleveland, his dad's expectations that he'd play college football, the relief when he'd chosen marketing instead. I told him about Indiana, about growing up in a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. "Do you miss it?" he asked. "Sometimes I miss my family, but Chicago feels more like where I'm supposed to be. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, I get that. When I first moved here after college, it felt like I could finally just breathe, like I could figure out who I was without everyone having an opinion about it." It was probably the most personal thing he'd shared with me, and I found myself wanting to know more. Wanting to understand what made him laugh, what kept him up at night, what he wanted out of life beyond the surface-level stuff we usually talked about. But I didn't push. Instead, I said, "Thanks for tonight, for inviting me, for all of this." I gestured vaguely at the apartment. "You don't have to thank me. We're roommates, friends, I hope." "Yeah," I said softly, "friends." We stayed up until nearly 2, talking about everything and nothing. When I finally went to bed, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Maybe Jade was right. Maybe I just needed to get out there, meet people, build a life. And maybe I could do that while living with Marcus without it being complicated. Maybe. Chapter 3, Complications. October arrived with a sudden cold snap that caught the entire city off guard. One day we were in t-shirts, the next we were digging through boxes for sweaters and jackets. Our apartment's heating system, it turned out, was as temperamental as the landlord had suspiciously failed to mention. "I'm pretty sure my room is actively colder than outside," Marcus complained one evening, wearing a hoodie and sweatpants as he made himself instant ramen. "Like, scientifically colder." "Did you tell the landlord?" "He said he'd look into it." Marcus made air quotes with one hand, nearly spilling his ramen, which means he'll ignore it until someone threatens legal action. I pulled my own hoodie tighter. At least we have working water. Low bar, but I'll take it. The cold brought us together in unexpected ways. Cooking dinner became a joint activity, partially because it was more efficient but mostly because the kitchen was the warmest room. Marcus started joining me for meal prep, and while he still couldn't cook to save his life, he was an excellent sous chef. "What am I doing?" he'd ask, holding a knife over a cutting board. "Dicing the onion." Define dicing. Small cubes all roughly the same size. Why do they have to be the same size? So they cook evenly. This is way more complicated than it needs to be. But he learned. Slowly, with the kind of focused determination he apparently brought to everything, Marcus started picking up basics. How to mince garlic without turning it into paste, the difference between sautéing and frying, why you didn't put oil in pasta water but you did salt it heavily. "You're a patient teacher," Vanessa observed one night when she'd stopped by for dinner. "I tried to teach him to make grilled cheese once and we nearly got divorced." "We're not married," Marcus pointed out. "Yet," she said, kissing his cheek. The word hung in the air, yet, which implied soon, which implied, what exactly? That they'd get engaged, married, that Marcus would probably move out, get his own place with Vanessa, and I'd need a new roommate. I focused very hard on stirring the pasta sauce. Work was going well, at least. My boss had noticed my writing skills and started giving me more creative projects, actual campaigns instead of just social media captions. It was challenging and exhausting, and I loved it. I'd even started making friends in the office, particularly with a graphic designer named Tasha who had a wicked sense of humor and zero filter. "So," she'd said one day at lunch, "are you seeing anyone?" "No," I'd replied, suddenly very interested in my sandwich. "But you're gay, right? I hope that's not weird to ask. My radar is usually pretty good, but sometimes I'm wrong." "No, you're right, I'm gay." "Cool, my brother's gay. Well, he's pan actually. Anyway, he's single and hot and you should totally let me set you up." I'd laugh despite myself. "Maybe, can I think about it?" "Take your time, but just so you know, he's a doctor, like an actual surgeon, and he volunteers at an animal shelter. I'm making him sound like a Hallmark movie character, but I promise he's real." The truth was, I had been using the apps more lately. Went on a few dates that ranged from awkward to actually pretty nice. There was Daniel, a teacher who was funny and sweet but ultimately felt more like a friend. There was Carlos, a personal trainer who was objectively gorgeous but we had nothing to talk about. There was James, different James than Marcus's friend, who'd been great right up until he mentioned his boyfriend of 5 years who didn't know they were open. I'd deleted his number and taken a break after that. "Dating is exhausting," I'd told Jade on the phone. "How do people do this?" "Most people don't have a unrequited crush on their straight roommate taking up valuable brain space," she'd replied. "I don't have a crush on Marcus." "Eli." I just think he's a good guy who happens to be attractive, but I'm not interested in him that way." "Sure, Jan." "Who's Jan?" "Oh my god, you need to watch more TV. The point is, you're lying to yourself." Maybe I was, but acknowledging it felt dangerous, like saying it out loud would make it real and impossible to ignore. As long as I kept it to myself, I could pretend it was manageable. Just a small, harmless appreciation for my roommate's good qualities. Nothing that would impact our friendship or make living together uncomfortable. Then came Halloween. Marcus had been excited about Halloween for weeks. "It's the best holiday," he'd insisted. "No family drama, no religious guilt, just costumes and candy and parties." He'd convinced me to go to a Halloween party with him and Vanessa. "It'll be fun," he'd promised. "James and Sophie are throwing it at their place. They go all out, decorations, themed cocktails, costume contest, you'll love it." I'd agreed, partly because I genuinely enjoyed hanging out with Marcus's friends, and partly because Jade had threatened to fly to Chicago and drag me there herself if I spent another Saturday night writing sad stories alone. The costume question had stumped me. Marcus had decided to go as a boxer, easy enough with some shorts and boxing gloves and strategically applied fake bruises. Vanessa was going as a referee, which was cute and clever and very them. I'd ended up ordering a vampire costume online, figuring it was classic enough to be recognizable but required minimal effort. Just a cape, some fangs, and really pale makeup. The night of the party, I emerged from my room to find Marcus in the kitchen, shirtless, while Vanessa painted bruises on his ribs with makeup. "Oh good, you're ready," Marcus said, catching sight of me. "What do you think?" He gestured to his torso. I thought several things, none of which were appropriate to say out loud. Mainly, I thought that Marcus apparently had abs you could grate cheese on, and I was definitely starring. "Looks good," I managed, realistic. "Vanessa's an artist," he grinned down at her. "She did this makeup course thing in college. Can you do Eli's vampire makeup? I feel like he needs to be paler." "I can do my own makeup," I protested. "Oh, please let me," Vanessa said. "I never get to do the fun special effects stuff anymore." Which is how I ended up sitting on the couch while Vanessa dabbed foundation 2 shades lighter than my skin tone onto my face, with Marcus watching and offering completely unhelpful commentary. "He needs to look more dead." "That's the goal, thank you," Vanessa said dryly. "What about contacts, the red ones?" "I'm not putting contacts in for a Halloween party," I said. "But think how cool it would look." Marcus stopped backseat makeuping. He held up his hands in surrender, grinning. He looked ridiculously happy, relaxed in a way I didn't always see. Usually there was a tension in his shoulders, a tightness around his eyes that suggested stress he didn't talk about. But tonight he was loose, laughing, excited about a stupid costume party like we were kids. It did something to my chest, seeing him like this. "Done," Vanessa announced, handing me a mirror. "What do you think?" I looked pale as death, with dark shadows under my eyes and artful blood dripping from one corner of my mouth. "This is actually really good." "I told you she was an artist," Marcus said proudly. The party was exactly as advertised. James and Sophie's apartment transformed into a haunted house, complete with fake cobwebs, jack-o'-lanterns, and a fog machine that was probably violating some kind of fire code. The place was packed with people in elaborate costumes, zombies and superheroes, memes and movie characters. I lost track of Marcus pretty quickly in the crowd, but found myself pulled into conversations with various people, most of whom were friendly and drunk in that happy Halloween way. Someone handed me a drink called Witch's Brew that tasted like punch and bad decisions. I sipped it carefully while a woman dressed as Wonder Woman told me about her divorce. "The thing is," she was saying, "I knew he wasn't right for me, but I stayed anyway because it was easier than being alone, you know." I nodded, not really knowing but understanding the sentiment. "Are you seeing anyone?" she asked. "No, single. By choice or circumstance?" "I consider that both, neither, it's complicated." She laughed. "Isn't it always?" Later, I found Marcus on the balcony, taking a break from the noise inside. He'd acquired a beer and was leaning against the railing, looking out at the street below. "Hey," I said, joining him, "you okay?" "Yeah, just needed some air, it's hot in there." He glanced over at me. "You having fun?" "Actually, yeah, I was not expecting to, but yes." "See, I told you." He bumped my shoulder with his. That casual touch again, the kind that meant nothing to him but lit up my nervous system like a pinball machine. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment. From inside, we could hear music and laughter, the sounds of people enjoying themselves. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said suddenly. "Sure." I mean, you don't have to answer if it's too personal, but are you dating anyone?" The question caught me off guard. "No, why?" "Just curious, you never really talk about that stuff, your dating life. And like, I know we're not best friends or anything, but we live together. I feel like I should know these things about you." My heart was beating too fast. "There's not much to tell, I've been on some dates but nothing serious." "But you're looking for something serious?" "Eventually, yeah, why are you asking?" Marcus shrugged, taking a swig of his beer. "I don't know. Vanessa said something the other day about how you always seem a little sad, not like depressed, just, I don't know, lonely maybe, and I felt bad because you're living with me and I want you to be happy." Oh God, this conversation was heading in a direction I absolutely could not handle while slightly drunk and wearing vampire makeup. "I'm fine," I said firmly. "Really, I appreciate you caring, but I'm good." "Okay." He didn't sound entirely convinced. "But just so you know, if you ever want to talk about stuff, dating stuff or whatever, I'm here. I know I'm not exactly an expert, but I'm a pretty good listener." The irony of it was almost funny. Marcus offering to give me dating advice while I was actively trying not to develop feelings for him. Thanks, I said, that means a lot. We stayed out there a while longer talking about nothing important until Vanessa came looking for Marcus to participate in the costume contest. They didn't win, that honor went to a couple dressed as Bob Ross and a happy little tree, but they looked happy together, laughing and posing for photos. I took a picture of them on Vanessa's phone and she insisted on getting one of all three of us. We crowded together, Marcus in the middle with his arms around both of us, and I tried not to think about how right it felt to be included in their orbit, even as the third wheel. On the Uber ride home, Vanessa had fallen asleep on Marcus's shoulder and he'd scrolled through his phone with his free hand, showing me memes and funny videos. It was domestic and comfortable and I wanted to freeze that moment, bottle it up, keep it somewhere safe. When we got back to the apartment, Marcus helped Vanessa to his room while I cleaned off my vampire makeup in the bathroom. I could hear their muffled voices through the wall, affectionate, intimate in the way of couples who have been together long enough to have their own language. I crawled into bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of them settling in next door. This was my life now, living parallel to Marcus's happiness, close enough to witness it but always on the outside. The smart thing would be to move out, find a new place, put some distance between us before this harmless appreciation turned into something that could actually hurt. But I didn't want to move out. Despite everything, I was happy here. Marcus was a good friend, a good person, and I was an adult who could handle his own feelings. I just needed to try harder. I just needed to not fall in love with my straight roommate. Too late, a small voice in my head whispered. I ignored it and went to sleep. Chapter 4, Thanksgiving. November brought shorter days and colder nights and the creeping realization that I was not, in fact, successfully managing my feelings for Marcus. If anything, they were getting worse. It was the small things that got to me. The way he'd started making me coffee in the morning before I was even awake, remembering exactly how I took it, one sugar splash of milk. The way he'd text me random things during the day, memes, articles he thought I'd find interesting, questions about what to make for dinner. The way he'd started joining me for my late-night writing sessions, sitting on the other end of the couch with a book or his laptop, the two of us existing in comfortable silence that somehow felt more intimate than conversation. What are you working on? He'd asked one night, looking up from his book. Just a story. Can I read it when you're done? Maybe, I'd lied, knowing the story was about a man who falls for someone he can't have. Thanksgiving was approaching and everyone at work was buzzing about travel plans and family gatherings. My parents had invited me home to Indiana, but the thought of spending 4 days in my childhood bedroom, fielding questions about why I wasn't dating anyone, made me want to crawl under my desk. What are you doing for Thanksgiving? Marcus asked one evening while we were making stir-fry together. Probably just staying here, my family's kind of, a lot. Marcus nodded like he understood. Vanessa and I are driving to her parents' place in Wisconsin, but you should come with us. Her mom always makes way too much food and they love having extra people. The offer was kind, but the thought of spending Thanksgiving as a third wheel at his girlfriend's family dinner sounded like a special kind of torture. That's really nice, but I don't want to impose. You wouldn't be imposing. I already asked Vanessa and she thought it was a great idea. Of course she did. Because Vanessa was lovely and generous and completely secure in her relationship, and I was the pathetic gay roommate who couldn't get his shit together. I appreciate it, but I think I'll just have a quiet Thanksgiving here, maybe catch up on some writing. Marcus frowned, clearly wanting to push the issue, but he let it drop. Okay, but if you change your mind, the invitation stands. The week before Thanksgiving, my boss announced layoffs. The marketing firm had lost a major client and they needed to cut costs. I survived the cuts, but barely. 3 people from my team were let go, including Tasha. This is bullshit, she'd said, packing up her desk. You know they kept you because you work for half what they should be paying you, right? Tasha. I'm not mad at you, I'm mad at capitalism. She'd given me a fierce hug. Keep in touch, okay? And for God's sake, ask my brother out. Life's too short to work for companies that don't value you and pine after straight roommates. I'm not. Eli, honey, you are the most obvious person I've ever met. After she left, I'd sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen, wondering if everyone could see through me as easily as Tasha had. Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and gray. Marcus and Vanessa left early, Marcus giving me a quick hug and making me promise to text him if I needed anything. The apartment felt cavernously empty after they were gone. I tried to write, tried to watch TV, tried to convince myself that spending Thanksgiving alone was actually a gift, a chance to recharge, to focus on myself, to not have to perform normalcy for anyone. By 2 p.m., I was crying on the couch for reasons I couldn't fully articulate. My phone rang. Jade. "Happy Thanksgiving, bitch," she said when I answered. "Why do you sound like you've been crying?" "I haven't." "Liar, what's wrong?" "Nothing, everything, I don't know." I wiped my face with my sleeve. "I'm fine." "You're clearly not fine, talk to me." So I did. I told her about Marcus, about how living with him was slowly killing me, about how every small kindness felt like a gift and a wound at the same time, about how I knew I needed to move out but couldn't bring myself to do it, about how I was terrified that this was it, that I was going to spend my life wanting things I couldn't have, loving people who could never love me back. "Eli," Jade said gently when I finally ran out of words, "you need to tell him." "Absolutely not." "Hear me out, you're torturing yourself by keeping this inside, and yeah, maybe he won't feel the same way, probably he won't, but at least you'll know, at least you can start moving on instead of being stuck in this limbo." Or I tell him, make everything weird, and have to move out and lose a friend in the process. "That's a possibility," she admitted, "but is this current situation really sustainable? Because from where I'm sitting, you're already losing yourself." I didn't have an answer for that. After we hung up, I forced myself to take a shower, to make some food, to do something other than wallow. I made a simple pasta, nothing fancy, just something to fill my stomach. As I ate alone at our small kitchen table, I tried to imagine what Marcus was doing. Probably laughing at some story Vanessa's dad was telling. Probably feeling grateful and warm and surrounded by people who loved him. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How's your Thanksgiving? We're about to eat and I'm already regretting not staying home for your cooking." I smiled despite myself and texted back, "Living the dream, made pasta, very festive." "That sounds way better than the dry turkey I'm looking at right now. Send photographic evidence of this allegedly dry turkey." A photo came through moments later, Marcus making an exaggerated sad face next to a perfectly normal-looking turkey. It made me laugh, which I suspected was the point. "You're being dramatic," I texted back. "Never. Hey, are you doing okay? I feel bad leaving you alone." "I'm good, stop worrying and enjoy your girlfriend's family." "Okay, but seriously, text me if you need anything, even if it's just memes." "Will do. Happy Thanksgiving, Marcus." "Happy Thanksgiving, Eli." I stared at the text conversation for a long time after, trying to read meaning into pixels on a screen. This was the problem. This was why Jade was right. Every interaction with Marcus felt loaded with possibility, and I had no way of knowing if it was real or just my wishful thinking painting over reality. The rest of the holiday weekend passed slowly. I wrote, I watched movies, I went for long walks in the cold to clear my head. By the time Marcus came home Sunday evening, I'd almost convinced myself I had things under control. "Eli," Marcus called out as he came through the door dragging a suitcase. "Dude, you would not believe the weekend I had." He looked exhausted, his hair messy, his clothes rumpled. He also looked off, like something was bothering him. "What happened?" I asked. Marcus dropped onto the couch with a heavy sigh. "Vanessa and I had a fight, a big one." My stomach dropped. "About what?" "About everything, the future, I don't know." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Her parents kept asking when we're getting engaged, and she pulled me aside and said she thinks we should start talking about it seriously, like looking at rings, setting a timeline." "And you don't want to?" "I don't know." He looked genuinely distressed. "I love her, I do, but we're 25, I just started my career. The idea of getting married right now feels insane." I sat down carefully on the other end of the couch. "What did you tell her?" "That I needed time to think about it," which apparently was the wrong answer because she spent the rest of the weekend barely speaking to me. He laughed bitterly. "Her mom kept giving me these disappointed looks like I'd personally insulted the entire family." I'm sorry, that sounds awful. The worst part is, I don't even know how I feel. Like, logically, Vanessa is great. We get along, we want similar things, our families like each other, on paper, we're perfect. But I prompted, my heart hammering. But I keep thinking there should be more, like, shouldn't I be excited about spending my life with someone? Shouldn't it feel less like checking boxes and more like, I don't know, something bigger? This was dangerous territory. I should have made an excuse and left the room. Instead, I heard myself ask, have you ever felt that way about anyone? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, maybe there was someone in college I had these intense feelings for, but it was complicated and never went anywhere. What made it complicated? He hesitated and I could see him wrestling with something. It wasn't someone I was supposed to have feelings for, so I just kind of buried it and moved on. Every nerve in my body was screaming at me to change the subject, but I couldn't. Do you ever regret that, not pursuing it? Sometimes. His voice was barely above a whisper, especially lately. Why lately? Marcus looked at me then, really looked at me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. I don't know, maybe because I'm realizing that doing what you're supposed to do doesn't always lead to happiness. The moment stretched between us, heavy with things unsaid. I should have said something, done something, but I was frozen, terrified that any movement would shatter whatever this was. Marcus's phone buzzed, breaking the spell. He glanced at it and sighed. Vanessa, I should call her back. Yeah, of course. He stood up, running a hand through his hair. Thanks for listening. I know this is probably more than you wanted to hear about my relationship drama. Anytime I managed, that's what friends are for. After Marcus disappeared into his room, I sat on the couch for a long time, replaying the conversation in my head. There was someone in college, someone he wasn't supposed to have feelings for, someone complicated. It probably meant nothing. Probably it was a girl in a relationship or his best friend's ex or any number of straight people complications that had nothing to do with me. But a tiny, treacherous part of me wondered. And that wondering was going to destroy me. Chapter 5, December. The first week of December brought an early snowstorm that dumped 8 inches on Chicago overnight. I woke up to Marcus banging on my door. Eli, get up, everything is canceled and we're building a snowman. What time is it? I groaned. 7:30, come on, the snow is perfect. I stumbled out of bed to find Marcus already dressed in snow gear, practically vibrating with excitement like a kid on Christmas morning. Despite my exhaustion, I couldn't help but smile. You're insane. I'm fun, there's a difference. Now get dressed before all the good snow gets taken. 20 minutes later, we were in the small courtyard behind our building, the world transformed into something clean and white and new. Marcus immediately started rolling snow into balls, and I found myself joining in despite the cold seeping through my gloves. We need a carrot for the nose, Marcus announced once we had the basic snowman shape. I don't think we have carrots. Check the fridge, I'll find rocks for eyes. I trudged back upstairs, my cheeks burning from the cold, and miraculously found a slightly sad-looking carrot in the vegetable drawer. When I returned, Marcus had not only found rocks but had also constructed a tiny snowman family next to our larger one. You've been busy, I observed. I work fast, he grinned, taking the carrot. Perfect, now we need a scarf and a hat. You're really committing to this. Obviously, if you're going to build a snowman, you build it right. We spent another hour outside, building and decorating until our snowman looked ridiculously over-accessorized with one of Marcus's old scarves and a bucket we'd found in the storage room serving as a hat. Other people from the building came out, some to build their own snow creations, others just to watch and laugh. This is the most fun I've had in weeks, Marcus said as we finally headed back inside, both of us soaked and shivering. Thanks for indulging me. Thanks for dragging me out of bed, I replied. I probably would have slept until noon. And missed this tragic. Back in the apartment, we peeled off our wet layers and Marcus immediately started making hot chocolate while I changed into dry clothes. When I emerged from my room, he handed me a mug topped with an absurd amount of whipped cream and mini marshmallows. This is about 60% sugar, I said. Correct, that's the optimal hot chocolate ratio. We settled on the couch, wrapped in blankets, and Marcus turned on a Christmas movie, Elf, which he claimed was the greatest Christmas movie ever made objectively. Home Alone would like a word, I countered. Home Alone is great, but Elf is perfect, there's a difference. Explain the difference. Elf has Will Ferrell in tights, Home Alone does not, QED. I laughed and Marcus looked pleased with himself. This was nice, easy, comfortable, the kind of friendship I'd always wanted. If I could just appreciate it for what it was instead of wanting more, everything would be fine. Halfway through the movie, Marcus's phone rang. Vanessa. His expression tightened slightly as he answered. Hey babes, yeah, we got dumped on. No, I just didn't think about it. I'm sorry, can we talk about this later? Okay, yeah, love you too. He hung up looking frustrated. Things between him and Vanessa had been tense since Thanksgiving. They were still together, still seeing each other regularly, but there was a strain that hadn't been there before. Everything okay? I asked carefully. Yeah, she's just annoyed I didn't invite her to come build a snowman, he sighed, which is fair, I guess. I just didn't think about it. Why didn't you think about it? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I don't know, I just wanted it to be just us this morning. Is that weird? Yes, my brain screamed. No, I said aloud, we're friends, friends hang out. Right, exactly, but he didn't sound convinced. The movie continued, but I could barely focus on it. My mind was churning, trying to understand what was happening between Marcus and me. These moments of closeness, the way he sought out my company, the weird tension with Vanessa, what did any of it mean? Probably nothing. Probably I was reading into normal friendship behavior because I wanted there to be more. Work became my escape. The firm was gearing up for a big campaign launch in January, and I threw myself into it, staying late at the office, bringing work home on weekends. It was easier to focus on brand messaging and target demographics than to sit in my apartment, hyper-aware of Marcus's presence in the next room. One evening, about 2 weeks before Christmas, I came home around 9 to find Marcus sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop, looking stressed. You okay? I asked, dropping my bag by the door. Yeah, just work stuff, client being difficult. He rubbed his eyes. How was your day? Long, I'm going to make some tea. Want some? Sure, actually, he hesitated. Can I ask you something? Of course. How do you know when it's time to end a relationship? The question hit me like ice water. Are you and Vanessa? I don't know, maybe. He looked miserable. We had another fight today. She wants me to meet with a realtor this weekend to look at apartments we could move into together, and I can't imagine it, living with her. And that's probably a sign, right, that I shouldn't be with someone if I don't want to live with them. I busied myself with the kettle, needing something to do with my hands. I mean, that's a pretty big step. It's okay to not be ready. But I've been not ready for months now. Every time she brings up the future, I find an excuse to avoid the conversation. That's not fair to her. Have you told her how you're feeling? Sort of, not really. He let out a frustrated breath. God, I'm such a coward. She deserves someone who's sure about her, someone who's excited about building a life together. And you're not that person. I don't think so, and I hate that because she's been nothing but great. This isn't her fault at all. It's me and my fucked up inability to just be happy with something good. I set a mug of tea in front of him and sat down across the table. For what it's worth, I don't think you're fucked up. I think you're being honest with yourself about what you want. That's actually pretty brave. Marcus looked up at me, something vulnerable in his expression. You always know what to say. How do you do that? Years of therapy and reading too many self-help books, I said lightly, trying to ignore the way my heart was racing. He smiled slightly. I don't know what I'd do without you. Seriously, living with you has been one of the best parts of this year. Same, I managed, the word barely making it past the lump in my throat. We sat there in silence for a while, drinking our tea, and I tried to memorize the moment. The warm light from the overhead fixture, the sound of cars passing on the street below, the way Marcus looked when he wasn't performing for anyone, just existing in his uncertainty and trusting me enough to witness it. I think I'm going to break up with her, he said finally. After the holidays, I don't want to ruin her Christmas, but I can't keep stringing her along. That's probably the right call, I said, even as part of me was screaming warnings. Marcus breaking up with Vanessa didn't mean anything for me. He was still straight. this changed nothing. Will you help me figure out what to say when the time comes? Of course. Marcus reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Thank you for everything. His hand was warm, his grip firm, and I let myself enjoy the contact for exactly 3 seconds before pulling away and standing up. I should get some work done before bed, I said, my voice coming out too high, but let me know if you need to talk more. Yeah, okay, good night, Eli. Good night. In my room, I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. This was bad. This was so much worse than I'd thought, because now there was hope, tiny and treacherous, whispering that maybe, just maybe, something could happen between us. But hope was dangerous, hope would destroy me. I texted Jade, he's breaking up with his girlfriend. She responded immediately, oh honey, be careful. I know. Do you though? Because this is exactly how people get hurt. I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to be a good friend. Famous last words. She was right, of course, but I couldn't help it. Despite all my best efforts, despite knowing better, despite every rational thought in my brain telling me to protect myself, I was already in too deep. And I had no idea how to get out. Chapter 6, Christmas. Christmas approached with the relentless cheer of retail stores and radio stations that had been playing holiday music since November 1st. The office did a secret Santa that was more stressful than fun, and everyone kept asking about my plans for the holidays. Going home to Indiana, I'd say, which was technically true. I'd finally agreed to spend Christmas with my family after my mom had called 3 times in one day, each call more guilt-laden than the last. I'm not getting any younger, Eli, she'd said, and I barely saw you last Christmas, your father and I miss you. So I'd booked a train ticket for December 23rd, returning the 26th, 3 days, I could survive 3 days. Marcus was also going home to Cleveland, leaving the same day I was. We'd both be back before New Year's, which he'd insisted we spend together. It'll be fun, he'd said. We can do that classic New Year's thing where we make resolutions we'll abandon by February. Sounds perfect, I'd replied, meaning it. The week before Christmas, the office had an unexpected half-day and I found myself home by 2 p.m. Marcus's door was closed, which was unusual for the middle of the day. I knocked softly. Yeah, his voice sounded off. You okay? Silence, then can you come in? I opened the door to find Marcus sitting on his bed, phone in hand, looking like he'd been crying. What happened? I asked, immediately concerned. I did it, I broke up with Vanessa, he let out a shaky breath. We were supposed to wait until after Christmas, but we got into another fight about apartments and I couldn't do it anymore, I told her. I sat down next to him, careful to leave space between us. How did she take it? Not great, she cried, asked if there was someone else. He laughed bitterly, which there isn't, obviously, I'm just an asshole who wasted 2 years of her life. You're not an asshole, you were honest with her. I should have been honest months ago. He wiped his face with his sleeve. She asked me if I ever really loved her and I didn't know how to answer that, because I did, I think, just not in the right way. What's the right way? Marcus looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. I don't know, that's the problem. I don't know what love is supposed to feel like. How do you know when it's real? The question felt too big, too loaded. I thought about Tyler, about all the ways I'd convinced myself that what we had was love when really it was just loneliness and proximity and desperation to be wanted. I think, I said slowly, that real love should feel like freedom, not obligation. It should make you want to be better but not require you to be different. And it should be something you choose every day, not something you're just going through the motions of. Is that from one of your self-help books? Marcus asked with a small smile. Probably, or I made it up just now, hard to say. He laughed and the sound was wet but genuine. You always know what to say. I really don't, I'm just good at pretending. We sat there in silence for a while and I wanted so badly to reach out to offer some kind of physical comfort. But I didn't trust myself, didn't trust that my touch would be just friendly, just supportive and not colored by everything I felt but couldn't say. Thank you, Marcus said finally, for being here, for not judging me. I would never judge you. Some people would, Vanessa's friends definitely will. They're all going to think I'm some heartless jerk who led her on. Maybe, but you know the truth, that's what matters. Marcus nodded, though he didn't look convinced. I should probably be alone for a while, process all this. Yeah, of course, I stood up, but if you need anything. I know, thank you, Eli. The next 2 days were strange. Marcus was quieter than usual, spending a lot of time in his room or at the gym. I gave him space, trying not to hover, trying not to read into every interaction. The night before we were both set to leave for our respective family visits, I made dinner, chicken parmesan, his favorite. He emerged from his room when I called him, looking surprised. You didn't have to do this, he said. I wanted to, consider it a pre-holiday meal. We ate mostly in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. The kind that comes from really knowing someone, from not needing to fill every moment with words. I'm dreading going home, Marcus said suddenly. My mom's going to ask about Vanessa immediately, and I'm going to have to explain why I broke up with her right before Christmas like some kind of Grinch. You could just tell her the truth, that it wasn't working. My mom loved Vanessa, she was already planning the wedding in her head, he sighed. My whole family was perfect Catholic wedding, lots of bobbies, the whole traditional thing. Something in his tone caught my attention. Is that what you want, the traditional thing? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I don't know what I want, that's kind of my whole problem. He looked up at me. What about you, what do you want? The question felt dangerous, from life in general. From anything, life, relationships, the future, all of it. I considered lying, giving him some safe, generic answer. But something about the moment, the low light, the vulnerability in his voice, made me want to be honest. I want to feel like I'm enough, I said quietly. Like I don't have to hide parts of myself or pretend to be someone I'm not to deserve love. I want someone to know all of me, the messy, uncertain, still figuring it out parts, and choose me anyway. Marcus stared at me with an intensity that made my skin feel too tight. You deserve that, you know that, right? Intellectually sure. Eli, he reached across the table and took my hand, and I froze. You're one of the best people I've ever met. Anyone who doesn't see that is an idiot. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at where his hand covered mine, warm and solid and impossible. Thanks, I managed. He didn't let go right away. We sat there, connected across the table, and I counted my heartbeats, 1, 2, 3, 4, before he finally pulled back. We should probably both get some sleep, Marcus said, his voice slightly rough. Early trains tomorrow. Yeah, right. I cleaned up while Marcus disappeared into his room, and I tried not to think about the way he'd looked at me, tried not to imagine meaning where there probably wasn't any. Later, lying in bed, I heard Marcus moving around in his room. The walls were thin enough that I could hear almost everything, the creak of his bed, the sound of him scrolling through his phone, the sigh he let out that sounded bone-deep tired. I wondered if he was thinking about Vanessa, or about whatever complicated feelings he'd had in college, or about nothing at all. I wondered if he ever thought about me. The next morning, we left at the same time. Marcus helped me carry my bag downstairs, and we stood on the sidewalk in the cold, our breath fogging in the air. Have a good Christmas, he said. Try not to let your family drive you too crazy. Same to you. Text me if you need an escape, I'll send you memes or, I don't know, badly drawn doodles, whatever helps. I smiled, I'll hold you to that. Marcus pulled me into a hug, quick and tight, and I let myself lean into it for just a second. He smelled like his usual soap and something else, something distinctly him, and I wanted to memorize it. See you in a few days, he said, pulling back. See you. I watched him walk toward the train station, his bag slung over his shoulder, until he turned the corner and disappeared from view. The train ride to Indiana was long and gave me too much time to think. I tried to write, but everything that came out was maudlin and self-pitying. I tried to read, but couldn't focus on the words. Finally, I just stared out the window and let myself feel everything I'd been trying to suppress. I was in love with Marcus. Not just attracted to him, not just harboring a crush. I was fully, completely, devastatingly in love with my straight roommate who had just gotten out of a relationship and who saw me as nothing more than a friend. Jade had been right, this was going to destroy me. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. already regretting this trip. My mom just asked if I'm planning to become a priest now that I'm single. Send help. Despite everything, I laughed. Tell her you're considering it, really lean into the drama. Excellent idea, I'll keep you updated on her reaction. For the rest of the train ride, we texted back and forth, stupid jokes, complaints about our families, random observations about nothing. It felt normal, easy, like we were just friends having a conversation. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I could be his friend and nothing more. Maybe I could learn to be satisfied with what I had instead of yearning for what I couldn't. Or maybe I was lying to myself again. My family's house looked exactly the same as when I'd left. Same wreath on the door, same ceramic Santa on the porch, same everything. My mom answered the door before I could even knock, pulling me into a hug that smelled like sugar cookies and perfume. Eli, you're so thin, are you eating enough? Hi Mom, I'm eating plenty. Come in, everyone's here. Angela brought the new boyfriend and your father's already interrogating him. My sister Angela waved from the couch where she sat next to a nervous-looking guy in a button-down shirt. My younger brother Marcus, yes Marcus, the irony wasn't lost on me, was playing video games with my cousin Tommy. My dad was in the kitchen, likely preparing his annual Christmas Eve feast. This was going to be a long 3 days. Christmas Eve passed in a blur of family traditions. The Seven Fishes dinner, midnight mass that I attended purely to avoid disappointing my mother, too much wine and not enough sleep. Everyone was in everyone else's business, asking questions, offering unsolicited advice, existing in that chaotic intimacy that only large Italian families can pull off. So when are you going to bring someone home? My aunt asked me over dinner. I'm focusing on my career right now, I deflected. Career doesn't keep you warm at night, she replied, and several people laughed. Leave him alone, my mom said. He'll meet someone when he's ready. The thing was, I had met someone. I'd met someone perfect and impossible, and I couldn't tell anyone in this room about it without facing questions I wasn't ready to answer. That night, lying in my childhood bed surrounded by posters I'd been too lazy to take down when I moved out, I checked my phone. A text from Marcus, Merry Christmas Eve. My family is driving me insane, how's yours? About the same, my aunt just asked when I'm going to get married. Oof, want to get married just to get everyone off our backs, I'll wear a tux. My heart did something complicated, tempting offer, but I think we can do better than a marriage of convenience. Fair point, okay, new plan, we both become hermits and live in the woods. I'm not outdoorsy enough for that. We'll bring books and a coffee maker, it'll be fine. I smiled at my phone like an idiot. This was the problem. Marcus made everything feel lighter, easier. Even when I was miserable, he could make me smile. Christmas Day was more of the same, too much food, too many people, too many questions, but I survived it. Counting down the hours until I could go home. Home, when had Chicago become home? When had that small apartment with its temperamental heating and creaky floors become the place I most wanted to be? I knew the answer, even if I couldn't admit it out loud. The train ride back on the 26th felt like freedom. I texted Marcus from the station, survived, barely, when's your train getting in? Around 8, want to grab dinner when I'm back? Definitely. He beat me home by about 20 minutes. When I walked in, he was already in the kitchen, attempting to make grilled cheese and failing spectacularly. Why is the bread burned but the cheese not melted? He asked, staring at his creation. Because you didn't turn the heat down, move over, I'll make it. My hero. We spent the evening on the couch, eating actually edible grilled cheese and catching each other up on our respective family dramas. Marcus's mom had indeed been horrified about the breakup with Vanessa, his dad had given him the "when I was your age" speech about commitment, and his younger sister had asked if he was gay. What did you say? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. I said no, obviously, because I'm not, but something flickered across.